My name is Clara Whitmore. I am 34 years old, living in Elmwood City, and I am the Chief Executive Officer of a successful technology company. My life is fast-paced and full of pressure. People often see the polished exterior, the designer suits and manicured nails, the way I glide confidently through board meetings, making decisions that can change the fate of my company and its hundreds of employees. For many, I am the image of success. Yet beneath that facade lies a different story, one I have worked tirelessly to bury. You see, I came from a world that was anything but glamorous. I spent most of my childhood in the foster care system. The stark reality of my upbringing was etched in my spirit, shaped by a scarcity of love and the fight for survival. This part of my past had slipped away from my consciousness over the years as I climbed the social and professional ladder. Or so I thought. Last Tuesday, a seemingly normal day, was meant to be just another step in my corporate journey. I had just finished a high-stakes meeting near Lexington Avenue in New York City, and my mind was racing through financial projections and potential partnerships. It was at that moment when I realized I must have dropped my wallet while hurrying down the busy sidewalk, lost in thought about my next appointment and wondering whether I could fit in a workout before dinner. As I was walking, still engrossed in a conversation with my assistant, an unexpected voice broke through my thoughts. "Excuse me, ma'am, I think you dropped this." I turned around, surprised, to see a small girl standing there. She could not have been more than 9 years old, her face dusty and her clothes ragged. But it was her eyes that struck me the most. There was an intensity in them, a wisdom that seemed far beyond her tender age. In her small hand, she held my wallet open, clearly having rummaged through it to ensure everything was intact. I blinked at her, momentarily speechless. "Thank you," I finally managed to say. As an impulse, I pulled out a couple of $100 bills, thinking she could use it far more than I could. But to my astonishment, she shook her head. "I do not want money," she said, her voice steady. "I just wanted to ask, do you know if there is a way I can go to school? Like any school, even an old one. I just want to learn." In that moment, my heart shattered. Here was this young girl, hungry and homeless, who had not eaten in 2 days, information I learned later from a passerby who had stopped to talk to her. Yet this little girl did not ask for food or shelter. No, her request was for something as fundamental as education. I stood paralyzed, caught in an emotional whirlwind. My past, the memories I had compartmentalized so neatly, came flooding back, overwhelming me. I was that child once. Though my story was different, the yearning was the same. My tears spilled over, and I could not contain the sobs that escaped me. The busy street faded away. For all the power and influence I had accumulated in my life, here I was, an executive in a tailored suit, weeping on a street corner because of this small child's pure heart. What I did not know then was that this encounter was only the beginning. Shortly after meeting her, I discovered she wasn't just a kid looking for a way out. She was a spark, an inspiration. All my carefully guarded vulnerabilities and insecurities bubbled to the surface, and that little girl ignited a flame within me. I felt a deep-seated need to help her, not only because she was in need, but because, in some inexplicable way, she represented everything I once aspired to be. So I got to work. Days turned into weeks as I sought out programs for underprivileged children. I enlisted the help of my local contacts, leveraged my network, even took a couple of meetings with nonprofits. I was determined to find a way to get this little girl into a school. It had become a mission for me. I imagined her bright future, sitting in a classroom, learning and thriving. But things were harder than I had anticipated. I hit myriad roadblocks every step of the way. I took the time to speak with community leaders and education advocates, and an uncomfortable truth settled in the pit of my stomach. Public resources for homeless children were shockingly limited, and many organizations were stretched thin, unable to take on new students. With each rejection, my heart grew heavier. My initial optimism began to dim, replaced by frustration and despair. I pushed on, delving deeper into my resources, only to be faced with one setback after another. The hurdles multiplied, and eventually, it began to feel as if the universe itself was conspiring against me. One particularly challenging day, I received a formal rejection letter from a nonprofit I had held high hopes for. They cited funding issues and the impossibility of taking on new students. I felt like I had hit rock bottom, like all my efforts had been in vain. I sat there in my shimmering office, staring at a wall of accolades and awards that seemed suddenly meaningless. I realized that no amount of money or status could change this systemic problem. It was a bitter pill to swallow. I started doubting my abilities to create the change I had envisioned. My heart ached for that little girl who simply wanted a chance, who was counting on me. This was not just about finding her a school, it was about giving her hope, about restoring her faith in the world. It was about speaking to the little girl I once was, the one who longed for a chance at education, even when it felt impossible. One evening, sitting at my desk well past sunset, I found myself staring at a list of resources, each one marking an insult I could not accept. I felt like I was losing my grip on something precious, and all the thoughts swirling in my head grew louder and more chaotic. In the midst of that chaos, I had an epiphany. Instead of waiting for someone else to help, why couldn't I create something of my own? What if I started a scholarship fund specifically for homeless children like the girl I met? Fueled by desperation and determination, I rushed to my computer and began drafting a plan. I would use my position to host fundraisers, engage businesses for donations, and reach out to wealthy individuals for contributions. I would create a platform where kids like her could find opportunities. The following weeks transformed my life into an unyielding whirlwind of movement. I poured my heart and soul into this project, an endeavor larger than myself, one that finally felt meaningful. And each time I found someone willing to contribute, every dollar raised became a small victory, illuminating the darkness that held me captive for too long. Time passed, and before I knew it, I had created the Clara Whitmore Foundation for Educational Opportunity. We had successfully gathered scholarships to help homeless children enroll in schools across the city. But it did not end there. We also included mentorship programs, tutoring services, and partnerships with local businesses to provide stable, supportive environments for these children. As I dug deeper into this work, I reached out to social workers who helped identify kids in need, including the girl who had started this journey for me. A few months later, I could finally reach out to her, and trembling with excitement, I invited her to a small event we were hosting to celebrate the launch of the foundation. On that crisp autumn day, as I stood behind the podium, I shared the story of how this all began. Not just my story, but her story, too. I wanted the world to see her courage and resilience, so I introduced her to everyone in the room. She was beaming, and in that moment, I saw the future I had fought so hard to give her start to unfold before my very eyes. As I finished my speech, she approached me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Thank you, Clara," she whispered, her trembling hands reaching out to my own. "You changed my life." It was then that I realized the journey of revenge I had initially envisioned had morphed into something far more beautiful: redemption. My past was a part of me, and this project allowed me to reconnect with it, to finally embrace both the shattered pieces and the triumphs of my life. In the weeks and months that followed, my foundation flourished. I turned my pain into purpose, empowering children who had faces similar to mine, who were fighting battles I once fought. The more I worked, the more fulfilled I felt. The emptiness I had carried for so long began to dissipate. In a surprising twist, the girl, whom I later learned was named Mia, became one of my closest allies, volunteering with my team to help other kids find the hope she had once sought. We shared dreams, ambitions, and laughter, rekindling a passion for life I thought I had lost along the way. Eventually, I realized that revenge was not about doing something dramatic to get back at those who had wronged us. It was about healing and channeling that stirred pain into action that made a difference. The nemesis I had originally perceived was not a person in a sharp suit I should outdo. It was my own shadows I had to confront and transform. So here I am, Clara Whitmore, a CEO now defined not by my past, but by the choices I made afterward. This journey has reshaped my life in ways I could never have imagined. I have turned my trials into triumphs, my hurt into hope, and my story into one that inspires not only myself, but countless lives around me. I have finally unearthed my truth, and in doing so, I have embraced the power of vulnerability. It is the most potent force of all, the one that leads to collective strength and resilience. Together, we will rise, hand in hand, building a brighter future for every child who dares to dream.